Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Got a treat in store for you. I'm thrilled to be joined by Malcolm Peace, who is the founder of Tetsera Growth Partners, a company specializing in acquiring family-owned small businesses with established Texas legacies. Unlike traditional private equity firms and business brokers, Tetsera takes a long-term approach, which we're going to talk all about. Malcolm certainly has a unique perspective as a first-generation American with South African ancestry, coupled with his passion for business and civic engagement. And absolutely thrilled to have Malcolm Peace on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I always love to get to know the person behind the microphone. Malcolm already alluded to, you've got an interesting perspective, but who are you and why are you so passionate about business?
Yeah, I love small business. I think small business has an ability to employ people in a way that maybe larger corporate companies can. Just they have different incentives. And when you're able to control the outcome in a private small business in the way that you take care of your employees, that is bar to none compared to the rest of the economy and things of that nature. So I think that that's the unique position that we get to have. And I like playing in a space that I can roll up my sleeves and make some, practical improvements to see kind of long-term success.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously our listeners can't see you, but you're a relatively young guy over here. And I'm curious, what was your first business venture? I know you have quite a bit of experience
Sure.
for a young fella, and you've been a coach, a consultant, and certainly you have a unique perspective, which is equipping small firms with a lot of tools. But where did you get started?
Yeah, candidly, I played college tennis, and so tennis has always kind of been, athletics has always been in my background. So if you really go way back, first lessons as a tennis coach when I was like 13, 14 years old, to probably a girlfriend or a family friend that was willing to sit there and do that with me. But yeah, that was kind of the beginnings of I could go earn my own dollars, was a kind of unique perspective. And I obviously had friends that did other things, ran the lawn care business or whatever the case may be. But being able to say, here's a set of skills that I have and I can go apply that and make good money on it. I was super excited to do that. So that was the beginnings of kind of the entrepreneurship, and obviously watched my parents. They have an entrepreneurship background as well. So I watched them and kind of made it my own through tennis.
Absolutely. And we're going to pick your brain on a lot of advice for fellow small business owners and entrepreneurs that are tuning in over here. But I also want to understand a lot more about Tetsera and the Texas small business landscape. But lastly, just on your personal background, I know your Southern African ancestry is really important to you. How does that mold or shape some of your business ideas and decisions?
Yeah, great question. So family immigrated from South Africa in 1990. I was born a few months later, so that ages me for everybody listening. But that to be said, my family had been there for many, many generations for a multitude of reasons on my mom's side and my dad's side throughout Southern Africa, ranging from Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and then moving down into South Africa eventually before moving to the States. And so with that, there's been entrepreneurship. And on my mom's side particularly, my great-grandfather owned about 50,000, 70,000 acres of land for cattle and dairy and employed hundreds of people and made a great product for the community and just had a beacon of employment and quality, within the local area. So all that to be said, Tetsera really meant to embody that, where we do business right, where we partner with the local community, like the government there, to be able to retain jobs and increase jobs, all that kind of stuff. We often get grants for land opportunities and things of that nature. But also at the same while take care of people inside the house too, from the employee side of things, because I really do believe these small businesses are built on these key employees that ultimately, spend many, many years, decades often, of their life invested into these companies.
Absolutely. I'm chatting with Malcolm Peace, again, the founder of Tetsera Growth Partners. Really, really interesting background. So, Malcolm, everything's bigger in Texas, but you're certainly proud of that small business landscape in that great state of Texas. So, why Texas, and why is that so important for you?
Yeah, candidly, I know the landscape, I know the laws, I know the tax implications of working and operating within the state, and I don't know it from any other state. So that was the practical first part. But then it becomes an idea of you want to be known. When you're competing in this space to get first kind of position engaging with these small business owners, you want to be hyper-focused on what you're communicating to them, because it is going to be their largest asset that they probably ever transition in their life. And so as a result, it can be very overwhelming for them to be bombarded with lots of information. And so we try to keep it very hyper-focused of here's how we concentrate, here's our game plan, here's what we do, and we're not intending on buying anything way outside the state or across the world or whatever the case may be. We're here to play in the backyard, and I understand this backyard very well.
Absolutely. So who are you working with at Sitera? What kind of companies are reaching out to you, and how do you and your team help them?
Yeah, so it starts back again. We went from a crawling to a walking phase, and I think we're getting close to that running phase in our development. But it comes through a journey personally as I kind of went from, like I said, I had a tennis background, played in college tennis, and then kind of had some coaching years after that, and then went to grad school and kind of made this transition into small business and investments and running and operating small businesses. And in that time, there was a stint where I was working for a larger private equity group where we were doing cybersecurity and defense contracting companies. And in that time, I will never forget sitting in Las Vegas at a convention, kind of early 3.0, Web 3.0, and also cryptocurrencies and things like that, and felt like a total fish out of water. And so I think for anybody, that's going through a phase of kind of honing in on their niche, it's sometimes just a series of events that take place. And so that was a really pivotal one for me where I realized, man, I am not going to fit into this space. So let me go work on rather than white collar type businesses. Let's go work on blue collar industrial type businesses. And I had a lot of exposure in that kind of in other, engagements that I had and partnerships that I had where we were working with a lot of blue collar type folks. And I think that one of the things that I'm uniquely positioned to do is be able to distill down kind of professionalization of business to an audience that maybe doesn't get that as much.
Absolutely. Again, chatting with Malcolm Peace. We're going to squeeze in a very quick break here on Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Get on my website, shalomklein.com. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share on your favorite podcast app. But again, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back on Get Down to Business, continuing our conversation with a fascinating small business owner or entrepreneur, again, first-generation American with Southern African ancestry, combined with a strong passion for business and civic engagement. That's Malcolm Peace. He's the founder of Sitera Growth Partners. Malcolm, welcome back. Thanks again for joining us. We've been chatting about your firm, again, called Sitera. And you practice what you preach, my friend. I know you are in the process of scaling your own firm. You mentioned that you're in the process of sort of moving into that run phase, which is great. So what are your big New Year's resolutions and growth plans for 2024?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with any business, those that we engage with, we purchase, or those that we go through the process of due diligence with or just interact with in general, businesses are always capped based on the capacity of the owner if they build a business like that. And what I mean by that is that the business owner is in the middle, like we like to call a centralized business. Everything flows to the owner. They're the control. They make the decisions. They have all the regulation on everything happening. That business will only grow to the capacity of that owner. And consequently, although we work on that outside in the portfolio companies, developing systems that are not dependent on an owner, in our firm, we did not do that early on. And so we are changing that going into 2024. Originally, it was me coming in as the operator for the first 6 months, and then I would replace myself with an operator. But that is an inefficient process to scale. So we are bringing, like you said, taking what we preach to what we do within our portfolio companies and bringing it in-house a little bit more to the firm side. And so we're rolling out our Generous Vice President program where we are hiring people to be in-house for a period of time before they go be a part of our businesses that we operate.
Amazing. Congratulations on all of that success. So we are a practical show, a show that provides homework assignments, if you will, to our listeners. We love to give people, again, the action, the advice, the information that they need to be successful as well. So Malcolm, you've been sharing a lot about your own success. What advice would you have for a fellow entrepreneur that may be tuning in?
Yeah, so we focus on businesses that are doing $3 to $12 million in revenue exclusively in Texas. But I think this advice can go just about anywhere. If you're in that phase or you're cresting into that phase or you aspire to be in that phase, building a business that has systems that are not centered around you, figuring out how many things, what we like to call our $10 tasks, that you can hand off to other people that are not worth your time that you continuously do. And we create a simple T-chart. Left-hand side, you write down all the tasks. You write down on the right-hand side if they're actually revenue generating or they have some sort of real upside potential with that task that you do. And if it doesn't, it needs to be off that list within 30 days. And we exclusively put that down to get our team thinking in a different form or fashion that they may have not had in the past.
Absolutely. And what perhaps mistakes would you recommend that folks avoid? I know it hasn't been all rainbows and butterflies for you and your team at Sitera, and certainly you are in the weeds with many of your portfolio companies that you're involved with. So what's some of the common mistakes that you'd recommend our listeners maybe steer clear from?
Yeah, as you're in that scaling phase, or you're kind of cresting that 7-figure mark, or whatever the case may be, you're going to start adding really, really important people to build that out. And what ends up happening is this subtle dynamic shift of leverage for that employee. So that employee becomes the business becomes heavily dependent on that employee. And then what you end up not doing is documenting. So you're always in this tug of war where you're having to increase pay or increase kind of the leverage that they get to have. And the business owner loses that leverage. And as a result is the business gets put into a position where it's actually highly risky because that employee may or may not be able to stay for a long period of time. And so what we do is we address where are those key risk points? What is that key thing that allows our business to thrive and do well? And we start de-risking that with standard operating procedure documentation to be able to eliminate some of that risk.
Absolutely. Malcolm, really enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot, and I know our listeners will as well. And in fact, I know that they'll want to get in touch with you and your team at Sitera Growth Partners. How can they do that?
Yeah, you can find us on Sitera.com, TSERRA. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, and other places. Malcolm Peace, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. Happy to chat with anybody. We're always looking for operators that want to run businesses in Texas, and we'd love to engage with business owners that are looking for somebody to buy their business and hold on to it for a long time.
Awesome. Malcolm Peace, thanks so much for joining us. Happy holidays to you, your team, your family. Looking forward to having you back on in the new year. That's a wrap for us here on the show about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. Get on my website, syklein.com to success. Let's get down to business. We'll see you next Sunday right here at M560, The Answer.